This is CBC News. It's smoky and 15 in Calgary, smoky and 12 degrees in Edmonton at 11 o'clock. Good morning, I'm Jocelyn Kozak. Communities across Alberta are lending a hand as structural firefighters in Jasper are trying to save as many buildings as possible this morning and protect key infrastructure. Officials say significant loss occurred in the town after the fire swept in from the south last night. Wildland firefighters without self-contained breathing apparatus were told to evacuate to Hinton due to poor air quality last night. Paige Parsons has more.
It's heartbreaking. From, the mayor getting emotional in his address last night to people scanning social media for photos and videos that might give them a clue as to what's happened to their home. Matthew Murray is a Jasper resident who fled with his cats.
I saw a picture that was flames behind a church, and my house is basically right behind that church.
Officials haven't confirmed specifically what's burned, and as of the last update, fire crews were still there with reinforcements coming from other communities, trying to save parts of the town that are still standing. We know that protecting key infrastructure is something officials have been emphasizing that they were focused on. Among those are the town's wastewater treatment plant and the Trans Mountain pipeline. We've also had a few hotels share confirmation. The Moline Lodge, the owner shared visuals showing the entire hotel on fire, and the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge confirmed that the fires had reached the grounds of that well-known resort. Paige Parsons, CBC News, Edmonton.
In Calgary, Mayor Jyoti Gondek is acknowledging the city's reception centre for Jasper evacuees closed early last night.
I can only imagine what it must have been like to have to rapidly evacuate and then drive 12 to 15 hours to show up here and be met with closed doors. It would have been heartbreaking.
Gondek says the previous night the centre had only a handful of people arrive overnight, so they decided to change the hours. Last night officials reopened the centre. It will now stay open continuously for 48 hours. Officials say 465 evacuees have registered. Banff National Park is facing extreme wildfire danger after weeks of bone-dry conditions. As the CBC's Brendan Coulter reports, tourists in the Bow Valley are being told to prepare for the worst.
We're very concerned.
Banff Fire Chief Russ Geyer says his crews have spent years training and creating fuel blocks for dangerous fire conditions.
So we are at a full state of readiness and prepared if a fire were to come near the town of Banff. 2
out-of-control fires were burning east of Banff National Park on Wednesday.
Anytime we see these extended periods of hot, dry conditions, the wildfire danger is going to increase.
Alberta Wildfire Information Officer Melissa Story says some rain is in the forecast, which should bring down the risk in the Rockies. But the humidity is expected to remain low over the coming days, which can lead to extreme fire behavior. Canmore Director of Emergency Management Caitlin Miller says wildfire has been the town's top-rated hazard for years.
So we just make sure that we're doing everything we can with evacuation workshops and plans and vegetation management, which is fuel reduction.
Miller says visitors should keep their medications and documents packed up and be ready to hit the road quickly. Brendan Coulter, CBC News, Calgary.
Lethbridge City Council has approved an updated guide on what that community's housing needs are and what it can do to address them. Osei Arete has more.
Between 7,000 and 8,000 units over the next 5 years.
Housing Solutions Coordinator Matthew Pitcher says the looming housing gap in Lethbridge makes the city's updated municipal housing strategy essential.
Being able to get ahead of that gap widening puts us in a great position.
City Council voted unanimously to adopt the strategy as a guide, but a second motion on administration coming back in the fall with specific plans narrowly passed 5-4. Deputy Mayor Jeff Carlson voted in favor.
I really don't want to delay.
The strategy suggests encouraging more density. Opposing councillors are concerned this forces change on neighborhoods. Carlson disagrees.
You're not going to go in and bulldoze every house in the city and build fourplexes. It just gives more opportunity, more flexibility.
He says densification also helps reduce residents' tax burden.
Every time we build out instead of building up and densifying, it costs more tax dollars.
City staff say any further plans would still need council approval. Osei Arete, CBC News, Lethbridge.
At the Paris Olympics, the Canadian women's soccer team is playing New Zealand this hour. They're in the second half with the score 2-1 for Canada. The opening ceremonies for the Paris Games are set for tomorrow afternoon, and we'll have coverage on all CBC platforms. That's your CBC News.
Hello, I'm Jim Brown in Calgary, and for the next 2 hours, we're going to be bringing you live programming dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper. We'll have information for you if you have been evacuated. We'll get the latest from our reporters near the park, and we will hear from municipal, provincial, and federal officials with the very latest on the situation. We'd also like to hear from you. If you've been affected by the evacuation of Jasper, please give us a call. The number is 1-866-468-4422. You can also send us an email. The address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. Now, we have listeners from British Columbia and Saskatchewan joining us for this broadcast today, and we do welcome your calls and emails too. And if you are an evacuee, we would particularly like to hear from you today. So please give us a call, share your story, and share whatever information you've been able to get on the situation in Jasper. Once again, that number is 1-866-468-4422, and our email address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. Now, joining me for the entire program today will be Jen Beverly, a wildfire expert at the University of Alberta. We will be getting to Jen shortly. Also coming up shortly, Premier Danielle Smith, the Minister of Forestry and Parks, Todd Loewen, and the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, Mike Ellis, along with officials from Alberta Wildlife, are going to provide an update on the wildfire situation. That update is scheduled for 11:15, and we will be bringing you that live as soon as it gets started. So stay tuned for that as well. But to kick things off, CBC reporter Travis McEwen is in Hinton. He's been in Hinton for the past couple of days now, and he joins me with the latest on the situation. Hello, Travis.
Hey, how are you doing?
I am doing fine, and we appreciate you joining us. What is the latest?
Well, unfortunately, the latest is that structure fire fighting right now is still happening in Jasper, and I say it's unfortunate because most of the residents who want answers and to find out what's burned, they're still not getting that from Parks Canada, from the municipality at this point. The fire situation still sounds like it's not safe for them to check everything right now, which is really frustrating for people here. But I mean, this fire was a very dangerous fire, very aggressive. So I think there's some understanding that they won't get those answers yet, but it's tough having to stand by in the meantime, right?
Absolutely. What do you know now about the damage that's already been done in Jasper?
So we don't have a lot confirmed yet, but we do know the Moline Lodge, the owner confirmed that burned last night. And as well, we know there's some damage to the Jasper Park Lodge as well. We just don't know at what point. And we know they're also trying to still save a lot of that important infrastructure in the town as well.
We're seeing a lot of video coming out of Jasper, and it doesn't look great, but I understand your colleagues in Edmonton are still trying to confirm a lot of that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen the video, and I was with some residents who actually watched it already too, and they're pretty horrified by what they're seeing. And we're still trying to verify that video, but a few people are recognizing some of the landmarks in there, and that's where we're trying to just make sure that that's actually Jasper in there, and we know for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what else have you been hearing from the people who have been evacuated?
Well, I actually just met with a couple of residents before I jumped on this here. There's a woman I met in my hotel. Her name's Darlene Cameron. She's been in Jasper since the 70s, just moved out here on vacation and decided she was going to stick around. And she said just that small town feel got her over the summer. And she's feeling pretty. Her and her husband are feeling pretty devastated, but they kind of think that their home's just burned at this point. Her positive outlook is that they were looking at maybe downsizing at one point anyway, and maybe this is going to push them in that direction. But they really feel for the community, and she moved out here and ended up working for Parks Canada herself. And I think she feels a little bit of dread for what the wildlife's going to look like out here, and that's why most people lived out here, because it's quiet and it's a beautiful country. The mountains are amazing. That's why many people from Edmonton come out. And at the same time, I just came from an RV. Ian Sheldon, he's an artist in Jasper. He's hanging out there with their kids. They're kind of lucky because, get this, they moved all their stuff out of their house because they're expecting to sell their house and move to Mexico.
Oh.
And so a lot of their things are in this RV. He said, but there's stuff in their business. He's got an artist gallery, and his wife's a spiritual healer. They've got a mixed space, and they've got a lot of their, the documents and things that they would need as well are in there. So he's a little more hopeful because there's downtown, and they haven't seen any videos showing what's up in downtown right now and what the damage is like there. So, but also, there's the sale of that house too, right? They're expecting to hand over the keys, and so he's not sure what's going to happen there, and he just feels for his community too, all the people that they know and love out here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let me get a weather report from you too, Travis, because that's so crucial in all of this. What's the weather like today?
In a way, it feels in a way like a gift and a curse because the rain's been coming down all day. Like last night, we were, talking to some people after the fire moved into the town around 9 o'clock and the rain started coming down. It was ash and rain. All the vehicles were really dirty. And then ever since, it's been raining overnight. It was off and on, but it's going heavy now. But the thing is, Parks Canada said yesterday, like the amount of rain that's forecasted probably isn't really going to be enough to have an impact. And it's too bad because this is what they want, but a lot of people are hopeful that maybe this will help in that firefight as well.
What about the rain and its effect on the North Fire?
Yeah, that's a smaller fire, right? As we heard yesterday, that was 275-ish hectares that have burned. So, that could have an impact on that one. I think the worry too is that if it doesn't have an impact, does that bigger fire end up meeting up with that one?
Yeah.
And that's the one that basically why people weren't heading out east towards Hinton at that initial evacuation, right?
Yeah.
And that's the one we actually on Tuesday got a view of, and we were supposed to do a tour of Jasper, but that one started growing at the time. But it's a lot smaller than the other one, and it's not. It's about yesterday in the last report, it was around 5 kilometers from the town.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because I heard that yesterday as well, and that's awfully close, 5 kilometers, with the speed at which the South Fire was moving yesterday anyway.
Oh, that was 8 kilometers yesterday, and then it's in the town.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So as far as today goes, I know that both last night and this morning, you were seeing fire trucks from other municipalities making their way into the park and into the town site. Is that continuing today?
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of help coming. I mean, the thing is, when you talk wildfire and firefighting, you've got the wildfire firefighters that are basically trying to control the wildfire, but all of these crews are structure firefighters and volunteer firefighters that are coming out from these other municipalities. Last night, we saw Grand Cache Fire Department, we saw Hinton, and I think Strathmore maybe was out there this morning, a few different ones, and then Edmonton's sending fire trucks as well. So they're getting all the help they could need out here throughout the day.
All right. Travis, we really appreciate you joining us with this update. Thanks. Stay safe out there.
No problem. Thanks for checking in. Great talking to you. And it's a tough story to cover out here because a lot of people are, it's a sad one, right?
I can believe it. And it's not your first.
No, I've done many of these wildfires at this point in my career. So
appreciate it, Travis. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
CBC reporter Travis McEwen is in Hinton. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have a wildfire expert with us for the entire 2 hours today. Jen Beverly is an associate professor in the Department of Renewable Resources at the University of Alberta. She's been studying wildfires for over 25 years. She also has 6 years' experience as a wildfire fighter. And Jen, we're really happy to have you on the show today. Thank you.
Good morning.
Now, before I get started with you, I just want to let you know that I'm looking at a podium right now, and our premier is shortly going to be standing behind it. So when I see some movement on the podium, I'll postpone our conversation and we'll go to her. But until the press conference starts, let me begin by asking you just how this all happened so quickly.
Well, yeah, I mean, the fire was reported at not a great distance from the community in the first place. So I think it was probably around 18 kilometers or so from town. And in these valleys, you've got a lot of continuous fuel and they also channel the winds, and that means that that's a distance that a fire can move through fairly quickly over a couple of days, even in a single day under extreme situations. So it's very unfortunate.
And what is the status of the fire, the latest that you've heard anyway?
I'm following the updates from officials as well from Parks Canada, and we'll hear the premier soon. But we heard that the fire did reach the community last night, and that structures are involved. And I've seen some of the video, as I'm sure listeners have seen on social media, and it's looking like it has had a devastating impact on the community. But we'll wait to see the extent of the damage.
Now, we were hearing yesterday that firefighters in the community who didn't have personal breathing apparatus were told to leave. Can you walk us through the process that's going on in the town side of Jasper right now? Who's there, who isn't there, what they're doing?
Yeah, well, that's probably something the officials should comment on. But I mean, typically, under the really extreme situations, it's not unusual that you would have to pull out all of your firefighting resources potentially as the fire is coming in. And the smoke conditions could be, quite unsafe. And so I'm sure they're assessing now this morning, and there's a bit of reprieve with the weather, a little bit of rain. That's not likely enough to put the fire out. We'll see what the forecast brings, but that certainly is enough to make conditions safe now, to have firefighters on site and other officials to start assessing and continuing to protect critical infrastructure, suppressing the fires within the built environment. But over the long term, that the conditions could also see the wildland fire continue to grow if we don't get a significant change in the weather.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to get a picture of the difference between fighting a wildfire and fighting structure fires, and what's going on in the town site now.
Right. So, there's no doubt a very coordinated effort between Parks Canada, like the wildland firefighting resources, as well as those that are assisting from Alberta and elsewhere, and the municipal structural firefighting process, which is different equipment and different training. But those two organizations and types of firefighters, structural versus wildland fire, use very different equipment. Wildland firefighters don't have breathing apparatus, for example, and they don't have the same training. They would not be involved at all in structure fire suppression. But the trained structural firefighters in the town and assisting from elsewhere, these are the kinds of fires they're trained to fight, and they have breathing apparatus and other equipment to keep them safe.
You are listening to special programming. We are talking about the wildfire situation in Jasper. We will continue with this program until 1 o'clock this afternoon. And my guest for all of it is Jen Beverly, an associate professor in the Department of Renewable Resources at the University of Alberta and a wildfire expert. And we would like to hear from you, particularly if you're an evacuee. Please give us a call. We'd like to hear your story. We'd like to hear whatever information you've been able to get from Jasper. The number, if you'd like to join us, is 1-866-468-4422. And I should say, since we have listeners in BC and Saskatchewan, that toll-free number will work for you as well. And you can also send an email to us. The address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. And once again, if you're just joining us, we are expecting very shortly to hear from Premier Danielle Smith, along with Public Safety and Emergency Services Minister Mike Ellis and Forestry and Parks Minister Todd Loewen. They're going to have an update on the wildfire situation for us, and we will be bringing you that live as soon as they get started at that press conference in Edmonton. So, Jen, from this point on, we've got a smaller fire to the north. We've got this intense fire that came up from the south. We've got a rainy day today in the Jasper parks. How does the firefighting proceed from here?
Well, the Parks Canada, they're going to be looking at the fire perimeters and where they can contain the fire. So, because of the topography, there's limited places where the fire can move into other areas, and I'm sure a priority will be trying to establish, extinguishing the fire edge and creating a containment line to keep the fire from spreading further, to keep it out of the Moline Valley, for example. And they'll use existing non-fuel areas, roads, rivers, and other breaks in the fuels, rock, to establish containment lines and begin the process of then suppressing the interior of the fire.
How does infrastructure like the Trans Mountain Pipeline, I guess potentially very flammable infrastructure, how does that affect all of this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know there can be potential shutdowns to pipelines when there are fires in the vicinity. I'm not sure what the plans are with the infrastructure in and around Jasper, and that's something no doubt officials will be able to comment on.
This is an area that you're quite familiar with, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I was involved actually early in my career, about 20 years ago, in some early planning sessions around wildfire mitigation in Jasper. And I was also back in a community during a previous really large wildfire that was affecting the Syncline, with the Syncline Ridge area in the Rocky River Valley, which is just a few valleys over from the current wildfire coming in from the south. And I was doing fire behavior predictions on that fire and got to see really these fires in these valleys can be extraordinarily intense, especially under summer conditions like the ones we're having this year. In fact, that fire in the Syncline Ridge fire back in 2003 blew up on the exact same day, July 24th. And so it's not uncommon to have big fires at this time of year in Jasper under extreme conditions like this.
Were the conditions leading up to it similar as well?
Yeah, in that case, it was a very dry summer. Jasper often gets what they referred to at the time as the June monsoons. And in this case, that particular summer, 2003, those rains just didn't happen, and it was really, really dry, leading to this what was a prescribed fire actually igniting as a wildfire and spreading later in July.
Yeah, we had a relatively wet spring this year, but it is amazing how quickly those conditions can change. A couple of dry days and that tinder on the ground level is just ready to go.
Yeah, well, the deeper fuels are pretty dry throughout the mountains and the mountain parks. So those are the heavier fuels deeper down, and the fine fuels on the surface, a little bit of rain can dampen those and set conditions back a couple of days. But the fuels do dry out fairly quickly over days and even a couple of weeks of an extreme warming trend, and you can have very explosive fire behavior conditions.
Are the fuels and the fire behavior situations different when you're dealing with a national park? Just the way the land is maintained, is it different than a similarly sized piece of land that isn't a national park?
Yeah, so in many of the national parks, there's an effort to promote wildfire as a beneficial ecological agent of renewal in across the landscape and for the forests. So these are fire or ecosystems and forests that have evolved with fire, and fire fulfills an important role in setting the stage for the next stand and creating heterogeneity or a diversity of different stand ages across the landscape. So in a park like Jasper, the Parks Canada has been managing to support fire on the landscape where it does not pose a threat to people and values. So more isolated areas is where you would like to see that happen, and not in the vicinity of communities. But ultimately, this is a landscape that is being managed for ecological objectives, which is different than other areas of productive forest areas, for example. And
are fire smart behaviors in place in national parks to protect communities like Jasper or Banff?
Yeah, absolutely. So the workshop I attended 20 years ago was at the early stages of looking at proactive wildfire mitigation around the town of Jasper, and that was that's been ongoing for a couple of decades now, and those efforts involve identifying stands, in particular in closer proximity to values, where you can reduce the fuels and that's crews on the ground, manually thinning out the stands, removing some of the trees, removing some of the fuels and underbrush and understory vegetation to reduce the potential intensity of a fire should one come into those areas. It's not intended to stop a fire, but it is intended to modify the fire behavior and to keep the fire on the surface. Once a fire gets up into the canopy and accesses all of that suspended aerial fuel in the canopy, the fire becomes very intense, but it also rains embers down on the built environment. So if you can keep the fire on the surface with these treatments, the hope is that you're going to avert those that sort of ember transfer and ignition of structures.
My guest for the next hour and a half is Jen Beverly, a wildfire expert at the University of Alberta, and we would like to hear from you on our special program today about the wildfire situation in Jasper. If you've been affected by the evacuation, if you yourself are an evacuee, please give us a call at 1-866-468-4422. Very shortly, we hope to take you to a news conference that Premier Smith is holding, along with Forestry and Parks Minister Todd Loewen and Public Safety and Emergency Services Minister Mike Ellis, to bring us the latest on the wildfire situation. As we wait for that to start, you may have heard in our 11 o'clock news that City of Calgary officials were apologizing to some evacuees this morning who were turned away from the evacuation center last night. Mayor Jyoti Gondek and Calgary Emergency Management Agency Chief Sue Henry explained earlier today what happened.
Now, as you know, when the fire started, we opened up the Evacuee Reception Center at Shouldice Arena, located at 1515 Home Road. This was intended to assist people with things like accommodations, with pet support, health and hygiene resources when they arrived in this city. Last night, when I heard that some evacuees came to our city but did not get the normal warm Calgary welcome, I immediately reached out to Chief Sue Henry to understand the situation. She was already aware of what had happened and quickly reopened the reception center. To those evacuees who did not immediately receive assistance, I apologize sincerely. I can only imagine what it must have been like to have to rapidly evacuate and then drive 12 to 15 hours to show up here and be met with closed doors. While this was only the case for about 20 minutes, I can understand that it would have been heartbreaking. I have been reassured that the reception center will remain open for the next 48 hours so that anyone who is seeking refuge from the wildfires is immediately able to seek assistance. And I want to thank the team at Calgary Emergency Management Agency for addressing yesterday's short gap in service so quickly. We all remain committed to supporting the people who had to flee from Jasper.
Our reception center reopened for overnight access last night at 11 p.m. to prepare for any late arrivals. The previous night, we'd had nearly zero overnight visitors, so we had modified our hours to close earlier in the evening. However, with the fire reaching the town site last night, we were able to quickly adjust and reopen to any overnight travelers. As of this morning, Calgary has 465 evacuees that have registered and been accommodated through our reception center. The reception center is located at the Shouldice Arena at 1515 Home Road Northwest. And if you are a Jasper resident and need accommodation, we know you are hurting right now. Please come down and we will make you feel at home and help you through those supports. So yesterday, the gap in service was very, very short. So what the initial plan was for yesterday, based on the night before, was to have the center open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We still had a ton of people out there at 5 p.m., so we were continuing to allow people in and process those people. Those people were coming in until about 10:15 when our folks left. At that time, we were able to see that there were still people coming. The conditions in Jasper changed last night, and I think it changed the dynamics of what people were expecting and how they were looking for longer-term supports. So we were able to shift very quickly, get a night shift team to come in and reopen that center very shortly after.
Mayor Jyoti Gondek and Calgary Emergency Management Agency Chief Sue Henry speaking earlier this morning. They say 65 to 85 people came through the evacuation center in Calgary overnight last night. I'm Jim Brown in Calgary, and you are listening to special programming dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper. We will be broadcasting until 1 o'clock this afternoon, and there is a call-in component to this broadcast as well. We are taking up, for the second half of the show, we're taking up the Alberta at Noon slot. So if you would like to join us with your thoughts on what you've been seeing in Jasper, if you've been affected by the evacuation yourself, or if you are an evacuee, give us a call. The number is 1-866-468-4422, or send us an email. The address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. If you have any questions, we do have a wildfire expert with us for the entire show, so call us with those as well. Right now, though, it's 11:30, and we're going to stop for a short news break. Tahira Firuzan joins me now from the newsroom. Hello, Tahira.
Hi, Jim. Since you were talking about the evacuation centers, I did want to say Edmonton as well, taking in people at the Kennedale site at building number 2. That's at 12814 58th Street here in Edmonton. Grand Prairie also taking in evacuees at Bonnet's Energy Center. That's at 10017 99th Avenue. And again in Calgary at the Shouldice Arena at 1515 Home Road. Of course, we're seeing a lot of images come in about the damage, but trying to confirm that they are accurate, their exact locations at this time. We do know that Moline Lodge was lost last night. There has been some damage to Jasper Park Lodge as well, but the extent of that damage is still unknown. Parks Canada saying it's impossible to share information about specific locations at the extent of the damage at this time. The accuracy of the information is critical, of course, because it affects people in the community, so they want to make sure that everything is accurate before they send out that information. And when it comes to the weather, Parks Canada saying that a small amount of rain did fall overnight last night, and while that rain did help slightly, it was not enough to make a meaningful impact to the overall wildfire situation, which remains out of control. Just taking a quick look at weather in Jasper today, about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain expected, but also a risk of a thunderstorm. Wind gusting to 40 at times, high of 14 degrees right now. It is a bit cooler in the town itself at 8. Tonight, a little bit of rain. That should end overnight. Widespread smoke. Wind out of the south, again, gusting to 40. And tomorrow, widespread smoke. Only a slight chance of showers tomorrow in Jasper and a high of 20 degrees. So things will start to, unfortunately, get quite a bit warmer, Jim.
All right. Tahira, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again in an hour. That's Tahira Firuzan in the newsroom. You are listening to special programming dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper. I'm Jim Brown in Calgary. We would like to hear from you today. If you have any connection to the story at all, whether you're an evacuee yourself or you know someone who is, please give us a call. The number is 1-866-468-4422. Now, the province of Alberta has requested federal military support. Harjit Sajjan is the Minister of Emergency Preparedness, and he was on the Calgary Eye-Opener with Lauren McGuinness this morning.
So the support in Jasper was always there. For Jasper, we were monitoring very quickly when the fire took place. They made the right decision.
And unfortunately, we're going to have to pull out of that tape from Minister Sajjan because Premier Danielle Smith has shown up at the podium in Edmonton now, and here she is with an update on the wildfire situation.
Good morning, everyone. In the last day or so, we have all seen on the news and social media the horrific pictures and videos coming out of Jasper. Homes and businesses have been lost to a wildfire that people are calling a wall of flames. There is no denying that this is the worst nightmare for any community. To the residents of Jasper and those displaced far from home looking at the images of your town on TV and online, the feelings of loss and fear and loneliness must be overwhelming. But you are not alone. All Albertans are with you. For many generations, the town of Jasper and the parks surrounding it have been a source of pride. With some of the most beautiful scenery in the world. Our grandparents visited to experience the majesty of this place with its mountains and lakes and meadows. They took our parents, who then took us to this special spot that they'd spent time in as children. And now we take our own kids and our own loved ones and visitors from around the world to feel that same feeling that you get with your first glimpse of the mountains on the horizon. A feeling that even though you've just left home, you're coming home. And so although those of us who experience Jasper as visitors can't imagine what it feels like to be a Jasperite right now, we share the sense of loss with all of those who live in the town, who care for it, and who have helped build it. Jasper, we will continue to stand by you, and as everyone works to get their feet back under them, and as we look forward to recovery. Right now, the wildfire is still out of control, and crews are working in dangerous conditions to try and protect critical infrastructure in the town. So to the brave men and women currently on the ground in Jasper, I want to express my deep gratitude and the gratitude of all Albertans. Whether you are part of the initial efforts or whether you were activated and drove in there last night or early this morning, there really are not enough words to express our thanks and our wishes for your safety and your success. Once again, you have put yourselves on the front lines in a show of true heroism. Thank you for your bravery and your commitment to keeping Albertans safe. Well, I will leave the specific details on the situation and the efforts of those fighting it to Ministers Todd Loewen and Minister Mike Ellis, as well as to our Alberta wildfire officials here with us today, Stephen Lacroix from the Emergency Management Agency and Christy Tucker from Forest. Let me assure you that Alberta is doing all that we can. Our Emergency Management Cabinet Committee meeting has been meeting daily for the last several days, and we will continue to do so. I have been in communication with the Federal Minister of Public Safety, Dominic LeBlanc. He's the Minister of Public Safety, Democratic Institutions and Intergovernmental Affairs. The Alberta Emergency Management Agency, Jasper Mayor Richard Ireland, and many others. I understand that Minister LeBlanc is being briefed as we speak, and I look forward to meeting with Minister Harjit Sajjan here in Edmonton later this afternoon, where he will join us at our command center. Alberta stands ready to assist in every way that we can, and I have asked Minister LeBlanc to move to a unified command structure so that Alberta can better help. We hope to hear a positive response from Parks Canada on this, and in the meantime, we will continue to provide any and all support that they request in any way that we can. I can tell you that Alberta Wildfire supported the Parks Canada Incident Management Team yesterday. They report that the situation on the ground overnight was extremely volatile. As we continue to battle the fire, our government will move to daily updates with Ministers Loewen and Ellis, as well as Alberta Wildfire officials. And we will continue with our daily written updates as well. To the residents, families, and business owners who call Jasper home, we will recover from this. To the men and women on the front line and at all operational levels, thank you for your courage and commitment. And to those in Alberta and around the world who have experienced the magic of Jasper, the magic is not lost and it never will be. Alberta's government will provide the support needed to families and community to recover and to rebuild stronger than ever so that future generations can continue to experience this one-of-a-kind community and to feel the magic of being able to come home. Well, thank you, and I'll turn it over to Minister Ellis.
Thank you, Premier, and thank you for those heartfelt words. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. The news that we're hearing out of Jasper is deeply saddening for all of us, especially for all the residents who call this beautiful part of Alberta's home. And I want all of you to know that Alberta's government is here for you, and we are doing everything that we can to fight this fire, to save as much of Jasper as we can. Jasper holds a very special place in all of our hearts, as the Premier mentioned. We all have a memory of our first visit and being struck by the wonder of this awesome beauty of the surrounding natural landscape, which is why this fire and the destruction it has caused is so devastating for all of us. The municipality of Jasper and Parks Canada, as the unified command for this wildfire response, will be in the best position to provide details on the exact impacts of the town and the national park. Officials at all levels continue to work together to protect everything that we can and, of course, to support evacuees. I commend wildland firefighters who are working tirelessly to prevent the fire from reaching our town sites throughout Alberta. The Alberta Emergency Management Agency has helped the municipality request structural firefighters from Hinton, Edmonton, and 32 other municipalities, plus Lakeland College, and industrial firefighters from across the province as relates to Jasper. I assure you that we have made efforts to mobilize every resource available to bring relief and support to the community. The Provincial Emergency Coordination Center is now at a level 4 activation to ensure full coordination across the provincial government. Our staff helped arrange staging grounds, meeting points, hotels for all those involved in the situation on the ground. And we continue to have field officers embedded within the local incident management team to help make connections between local authorities, first responders, government ministries, and municipal resources in other areas. I want to reiterate that Alberta Health Services and Emergency Medical Services safely evacuated patients from the area, including both acute care patients and designated support living residents. Patients and designated supporting living residents were transported to healthcare facilities in Edson and Hinton. 2 patients were flown to Prince George. We're also aware that the Seniors Lodge was evacuated separately. Alberta Health Services has contacted families of those impacted and will continue to provide information as needed. Reception centers for evacuees have been up and running in Grand Prairie, Calgary, Edmonton since Tuesday. Staff are working around the clock to provide mental health supports for all those impacted. Municipal emergency social services teams located at each reception center have been welcoming evacuees for the past few days. They're providing support for immediate basic needs with a focus on providing food and water, a place to stay, supports for physical and emotional well-being. I'd like to commend and thank the cities of Edmonton, Calgary, Grand Prairie for stepping up and accommodating their fellow Albertans at a time. And to all other municipalities who have stepped up to offer support in the firefighting effort, thank you. Thank you on behalf of all Albertans. Apart from the situation in Jasper, the Municipal District of Bighorn issued an evacuation order for the area east of Highway 40 and west of Ghost Public Land Access Point. The reception center continues to be open to evacuees in Water Valley Community Hall. An evacuation alert is also in effect for residents of the surrounding area, meaning that they should be prepared to evacuate with little notice. There are resources that can help people to get ready. That's at alberta.ca/be-ready. On that webpage, the public can find everything from a list of items to pack, details on how to prepare your pets, your vehicles in the event of an evacuation. In addition to the areas I previously mentioned, evacuation orders are also remain in effect for Little Red River Cree Nation, including the communities of John Doerr Prairie, Fox Lake, and Garden River. The Municipal District of Opportunities evacuation order of Chippewa Lake is also still in place. The evacuation order for Janvier 194, part of the Chippewa Prairie First Nation, and the evacuation alert for the hamlet of Janvier were both lifted by the local authorities this morning after some helpful rainfall. We continue to ask residents in all affected communities to listen to local officials, follow any evacuation orders and instructions that you may receive. Follow the Alberta Emergency Alert app and website, your local municipality for evacuation information and available services. Alberta 511 also provides an up-to-date information on highway closures and conditions. The estimated number of evacuees province-wide remains at more than 17,500. This number is still limited to people who are displaced from their residence or who need supports. While there were an estimated 25,000 people in the Jasper National Park at the time of the evacuation order, the vast majority of these people were visitors with other places to return to. I'll reiterate to those under an evacuation order to please register online as an evacuee at emergencyregistration.alberta.ca. Doing so will help access resources and important information like updates and reentry plans. Individuals who are a part of a mandatory evacuation order exceeding a minimum of 7 days, including temporary foreign workers, are eligible to receive a one-time payment of $1,250 for each adult and an additional $500 for each child under the age of 18. Residents of the following communities can apply for emergency evacuation payments: the Garden River community within the Little Red River Cree Nation, Janvier 194, which is part of the Chippewa Prairie First Nation, and Chippewa Lake. We are ever and forever grateful for the work of wildfire personnel, local authorities, and emergency officials. Our thoughts are, of course, with the families and the businesses and workers who are wrestling with the thoughts of their own homes and livelihoods and their sense of security. But in times like these, we invariably witness an unwavering spirit of community, and that's what we've seen here in Alberta. The bravery of our firefighters, the dedication of first responders, emergency management personnel, and the compassion of EMTs and social support workers is truly inspirational. I understand that many Albertans are facing extremely trying time at present. Know this, your fellow Albertans are with you. Alberta's government is here for you, along with our various interagency partners. We will continue to work diligently to support you, protect your communities, and I thank you, and I'd like to now invite Minister Lowen to make a few comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Ellis, and thanks everyone for being here for this morning's wildfire update. Yesterday marked a truly heartbreaking day in our province's history. It's late Wednesday afternoon, the wildfire in Jasper National Park made contact with Jasper town site. The images we're seeing out of Jasper are devastating, and my heart goes out to the community. Words of any kind seem insufficient right now, but to the people of Jasper, I'm incredibly sorry for your loss. I'd also like to say that we're grateful to community members and visitors for following local alerts and evacuating when they did. While the pain of what's occurring right now is overwhelming, we can all be grateful that residents and visitors are safe. We're thankful too for everything our brave firefighters and emergency responders did to try to battle the fire. We know without these firefighters, things could have been even worse. This wildfire is under the command of Parks Canada, and we are assisting them with all available assets and have offered up any help that they require. Alberta's government will continue to lend support to firefighting operations in the region. So far, we've sent firefighters, support personnel, water trucks, a dozer group, helicopters, and air tankers to assist with response on the Jasper wildfire. Alberta's government is also sending an incident management team to help assess the situation, and we have personnel and resources standing by to help as needed. I'd also like to thank our federal partners for responding as quickly as they did to our urgent request for help from the Canadian Armed Forces. We're currently strategizing the best way to utilize these firefighting resources. Alberta once again finds itself in a difficult and dangerous situation due to wildfires. Heightened wildfire danger and activity have taken their toll on the well-being of countless Albertans and communities, and danger levels look like they'll remain high in many areas for the foreseeable future. Alberta currently has over 170 active wildfires burning throughout the province, with more than 50 of these classified as out of control. Many of the wildfires we're seeing at this time of the year are lightning caused, and we unfortunately can't control the weather. But what we can do as a province is exercise extreme caution. Now more than ever, make sure you follow all local advisories and restrictions. While it may not always feel like it, our actions and choices as Albertans play a crucial role in keeping our province safe. Preventing further human-caused wildfires and doing what we can to support our emergency responders will allow them to do their jobs more effectively. Before I hand things over to Christy Tucker, I want to say once again how incredibly grateful we are for the work of all wildfire personnel, local authorities, and emergency officials who are battling wildfires across the province to keep Albertans safe. Thank you as well to our provincial, federal, and international partners who did not hesitate to send their highly experienced
That is a provincial update on the fire situation in Jasper. You heard from Premier Danielle Smith, and then shortly after her, Public Safety and Emergency Services Minister Mike Ellis, and just wrapping up now is Forestry and Parks Minister Todd Loewen. If you missed any of it, I can tell you that it was a very emotional Premier Smith who kicked things off, particularly when she was describing the beauty of the Jasper area. It clearly was resonating quite strongly with the Premier. She says she's been talking to the Minister of Public Safety, Dominic LeBlanc. She has asked him to move to a unified command center to coordinate the response to the fire. I can tell you that that Harjit Sajjan, the Minister of Emergency Preparedness, tweeted out earlier this morning that he is en route to Edmonton to help coordinate the wildfire response. Premier Smith also promised daily updates on the fire situation begin today. And she ended by saying to residents of Jasper, "We will recover from this." She said, "The magic is not lost and it never will be." Now, Richard Ireland is the mayor of Jasper. He has been no doubt listening to the Premier's press conference and following everything extremely closely over the past couple of days, and he joins me on the line now. Mayor Ireland, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Now, I don't know how much of that you heard. We had clearly a very emotional Danielle Smith talking about the impact that Jasper, or the influence that Jasper has, that image of Jasper, the effect it has on the imagination of Albertans. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, although I unfortunately did not hear the Premier's words, that little encapsulation of them just lands perfectly with me. All of Jasper recognizes that although it is home for us and precious to us in a really special way, we are the backyard for at least the northern half of Alberta and maybe more, and we are an iconic Canadian destination for both Canadian guests and international visitations. We understand that we have a role to play in the tourism industry worldwide, and we've been really proud to play that role. Now, of course, there is going to be a bit of a hiatus. It's going to take us some time to get our feet back on the ground and get back into the business that we do so well. But I share with the Premier that we have a spirit that I think will allow us to do that.
What is the latest information that you have heard that you've been able to verify about the situation in Jasper today?
Well, thank you for using that particular word, verify. There is very little that I can verify right now. I appreciate that so many people have a deep interest in knowing the details. We were scheduled for a briefing which would give us some of those details, hopefully, since 10:30 this morning, but I can appreciate that the crews on the ground in Jasper are still working their utmost to protect structures that are still standing and just haven't had time to organize that. So now I think scheduled for 12:30, so we will know shortly at least some of the details. But recognizing also that we have to be specific now. We know that there is extensive loss. There are homes that have been destroyed. There are businesses that have been destroyed. But we cannot be wrong on any of this. When we give out information about whether a structure is standing or obliterated, we have to be perfectly accurate. So we need that level of detail. We cannot be giving any wrong information to anyone at this point.
Mayor Ireland, if you don't mind standing by just for a moment, the question period has started at that press conference with the Premier, so we'd just like to go back to taking that live, and then you can listen in, and then I'll connect with you right afterwards. So here we go now. This is Premier Smith responding to a question.
Federal supports and kind of talking about when you mentioned that the feds are in charge, but you guys also called for military support. So who makes that call for an earlier call on that?
I had been in touch with the Prime Minister's office through my staff. Minister Ellis had been in touch with his counterpart, and Managing Director Stephen Lacroix had been in touch with the military as of July 18th, letting them know that a call might come in. The ultimate decision on who to bring resources in at the moment is with Parks Canada in unified command with the municipality of Jasper. If we were able to be part of unified command, there's just a few things that when I raised it with Dominic LeBlanc, we can't just send equipment into federal airspace without coordination. You can't send in unmanned aerial vehicles, which we use with infrared. We can't send in hard helicopters with night vision. We can't send in water bombers without being integrated with them. That's one of the reasons. We also are very quick to respond with dozers to be able to create fire guards, and so we can't do that without them giving the order that to assist in building those fire guards and putting dozers around. We also have a bunch of new equipment, as I've mentioned. We do night vision helicopters to allow us to get a sense of what the fire is so that we can place crews. We would be able to bring that to bear. We have also changed to doing night firefighting. We found that we have the ability to get ahead of the fires. When there's night firefighting, they don't do that, as I understand it, with Parks Canada, so that would be another thing that we would be able to bring to bear. And then we also have a lot of resources with the urban wildfire interface. We put an RFP out to 4 different companies that are able to put essentially a wall of water up to match the wall of fire, and so these are the kind of resources that we would bring to bear as part of unified command.
Darcy Robchan, City News. I think this might be for Christy Tucker, but can you speak to any impact at all that the rain in Jasper has had, if any, on the situation there?
Well, I can say precipitation is always welcome in that it increases the humidity, even if it doesn't fall directly enough water falls on the fire to really suppress the activity fully of the fire. But raising the humidity does tend to lower fire behavior. I saw a statement from Parks Canada today, and they are really best placed to speak to the exact conditions on the fire. But they did say that they did receive some rain. Reports in the area say there was rain on and off overnight, but it really wasn't sufficient in order to really make a humongous change there in the fire that they're dealing with. So this is still obviously a long-term firefight for now.
My next question will be for one of the ministers or the premier perhaps, but just with the level of destruction that we're seeing in Jasper, can you talk about the potential to expand benefits for evacuees who may be away from home for a long time?
Well, one of the ways in which we support evacuees is that we set up the emergency response centers. As Minister Ellis mentioned, we have them in Grand Prairie, Edmonton, and Calgary. We also provide support for them to be able to go to hotels and be able to get meals. Our program kicks in after day 7, $1,250 per adult, $500 per child, and so there's already 3 communities that have been out 7 days or longer that are going to qualify for that. Minister Ellis mentioned that, but we have a long-term recovery that we'll have to work with our federal counterparts on. We're seeing potentially 30 to 50% structural damage. To give you some idea, I mean, you've seen the images as I have. We don't know particularly which structures have been damaged and which ones have been destroyed, but that's going to be a significant rebuild and significant displacement for a long period of time. Fire is one of those types of hazards that is normally covered by insurance, and so we'll integrate with insurance companies to make sure people have the long-term support to be outside, and then we'll have to have a conversation with our cabinet if there's any gaps that need to be filled. Did you have any more to say on that, Minister Ellis?
I think you're going to be speaking with the Prime Minister.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I should just mention, you can add if you want. I believe we've lined up a call with the Prime Minister for 2:30 today, and Minister Harjit Sajjan will be here as well. So, and I've been in touch with the Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, and we'll do a briefing afterwards. So at the moment, we still have to put all the fires out. We still have to deal with the immediate emergency and make sure that there isn't more structural damage. And then once that's stabilized, we'll have to do an assessment to get into recovery.
Go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Lisa Johnson with the Canadian Press. Premier, you mentioned 30 to 60% structural damage. I'm wondering if you can give us a few more details of what critical infrastructure is left in the town that now needs to be protected.
All I can say, we haven't had a line of sight on what has happened. As you probably saw, when structural firefighting is very different, because when structures start to burn, it sets off a toxic amount of chemicals in the air. So many of the Parks Canada officials had to leave last night, and so there was structural firefighters that remained. I think what you're seeing is just some of the images online that...
For our listeners in Saskatchewan and BC, here in Alberta, we are going to stay with Premier Smith's press conference. You will be taking a short break for your local news, but then we will be back with more on the situation in Jasper in about 5 minutes.
From Parks Canada, I understand that there's emergency meeting of the DMs with Minister LeBlanc right now. We'd been told that Parks Canada is arranging for some kind of more formal briefing. I don't think that they've pinned down a time on that yet, but they'll be the ones who have the direct line of sight on what the structural damage looks like.
And just on that as well, I don't know if you can provide any more information, but those folks who left last night because of the issues that you mentioned, can you speak to what operationally is being done now? Are they coming back to Jasper to assist, or?
It's probably all the structural.
Yeah, so the firefighters that left were the wildland firefighters, and there's no, we haven't heard when they'll be coming back in. Right now, the focus is on the structures within Jasper, and that'll be the focus right now. I expect that the wildland firefighters will be back in shortly to be able to take care of the actual wildfire itself. And but again, right now the focus is on the structural.
We did have 2 unit crews, which are crews of 20 firefighters that were in Jasper working on the wildland aspect of this fire. I have heard from them. We've had a check-in with them, obviously regarding what they experienced last night, and they are ready to go back to work.
Yeah. Let me just further add, we were very fortunate to have Joe Satilny, who's a ADM in Alberta Emergency Management, former fire chief in Edmonton. He's been, of course, on the phone, as many of us have been throughout the days and nights. And we've been able to bring in structural firefighters from 32 municipalities all throughout Alberta. So it is certainly grateful to all the municipalities that stepped up to the plate in order to assist what is going on in Jasper. Just so everybody's aware, firefighting from a structural firefighting is different than firefighting from a wildfire. And I think, as my colleagues have previously mentioned, when you're dealing with structural firefighters, there's a lot of unknown risks, sometimes gas leaks, sometimes toxic fumes. So this is very different. I just want to correct what that one reporter indicated is 30 to 50%. Again, this is a very ongoing and fluid situation. There's still fires that are going within the community of Jasper. So we're still assessing the situation, and we're hoping for a further update from Parks Canada as to the extent of the damage.
Thank you. And seeing no new faces here in the room, we're going to move over to the phones. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please? Operator, could you put through our first caller on the line, please?
The lines are open. Mr. Charles DeLisle.
Hello, Charles DeLisle, Radio Canada, Alberta. My question is for Steven Lacroix. If you could answer in French. Basically, what happened? What did it move too quickly? Can we get an answer in French?
Oui, je vais répéter ce que la première ministre a déjà mentionné. Ce qui est nécessairement arrivé, c'est que les vents extrêmes ont fait en sorte que le feu a augmenté de façon totalement incontrôlable et progressé vers la municipalité de Jasper. Donc c'est essentiellement ce qui s'est passé. Pas grand-chose qui pouvait être fait de plus. Et aussi, je mentionnerais que c'était tout sous l'égide de Parcs Canada et de la municipalité de Jasper qui gérait l'incident, qui est en fait dans un parc national sous laquelle, à ce moment-ci, la province, bien contente d'entrer en une forme de commandement partagé avec les deux autorités que j'ai mentionnées, et sous l'égide de Parcs Canada et de la municipalité de Jasper, encore une fois. Merci.
Can you say it in English?
Yeah, so essentially I kind of repeated what the Prime Minister said. stated that the fire became out of control, or was already out of control, but it was uncontrollable is the way I would depict it, due to the wind gusts that brought the fire up to about 100 meters high at one point, and covered an inordinate amount of space in a very little amount of time, which led us to the situation that we're in. I also mentioned that Unified Command is actually between the municipality of Jasper and Parks Canada, and that we're trying to find a way to insert ourselves in that construct to be at the table, influencing and sharing in the decisions that are being made.
We'd like to welcome in listeners from British Columbia and Saskatchewan. You are listening to Alberta at Noon, a special edition and a live press conference with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, 2 provincial ministers and wildlife officials. This is all about the wildfire situation in Jasper National Park.
How was it communicated to the tourists that were there?
Well, I might get Stephen to supplement this, to be honest with you. But yeah, we, of course, utilized our Alberta Emergency Management System to make sure that alerts were sent out to everyone. Obviously, there are, of course, the challenges of people that are backpacking and hiking and camping like that. But we, of course, utilized our local police, the RCMP of area, to also engage their resources in order to assist with locating and evacuating people out of the area. But I don't know if you can explain a little bit more, Stephen.
Yeah, very briefly. Thanks, Minister. Yeah, I would add that the Alberta Emergency Alert System, so broadcast intrusive and application were used. The municipality of Jasper also used their own tool that they have called Voyant, I believe you. And to be perfectly honest, this is a question that should probably be addressed to Parks Canada and Mayor Arland and his team. But that's what transpired. There were 200% checks done by the RCMP in town, door knocking, door to door, to make sure everybody was out. I know that Parks Canada went out and sought out backcountry campers and notified them that depending where they were in relation to the fire coming, they could hitch a ride with the helicopter that found them, or they needed to hike back to their vehicles and get out of the park. So that's as much as I know. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Could you get French?
OK, Charles, je vais essayer de me rappeler de ce que je viens de mentionner en anglais. Donc, on a une application, telle que mentionnée, qui distribue les alertes de façon intrusive sur les téléphones.
You are listening to a special edition of Alberta at Noon. I'm Jim Brown in Calgary, and today our program is dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper. We have wildfire experts standing by with us throughout the program to answer any questions you might have. And if you have been affected by the evacuation of Jasper, we would like to hear from you. If you have memories of Jasper, we'd like to hear from you as well. Give us a call at 1-866-468-4422 or send us an email. The address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. We have listeners from both British Columbia and Saskatchewan joining us for this broadcast as well. We do welcome your calls and your emails. I have been assured that our toll-free number will work in your provinces as well. As I said, if you're an evacuee, we would like to hear your story. And if you have, either you or your family or historically memories of Jasper that you would like to share with the rest of our listeners, we do welcome those calls as well. We earlier heard Premier Smith get quite emotional in her remarks talking about what Jasper means to Albertans and just how much has been lost. Let's go back and listen into the press conference for a couple more minutes now.
This would probably be for everybody here. After the 2016 wildfire in Fort McMurray, Alberta announced evacuees would get emergency financial relief 2 days after the evacuation. Jasper has seen similar destruction to Fort McMurray. Actually, if we're talking percentage-wise, Jasper lost a greater percentage of the town. So why not just authorize those payments now? I mean, does anyone here really believe this evacuation will last fewer than 7 days?
One of the decisions that we made in previous emergencies is that we would wait for 7 days, because there's oftentimes you can return within a shorter period of time, as has happened. We have had evacuations already this fire season, which started early, and we have been able to get people back home within 7 days. There is a Treasury Board process that we have to go through in order to be able to accelerate or expedite that. And so we'll be meeting as an emergency management committee each day, gauging it. But the main thing that people need right now is to have the immediate support. So the support of the hotels, the food, the emergency evacuation, that's part of the reason why we wait until 7 days, because we know that we have a lot of support that we're able to give as people are figuring out where they're going to go, find out whether they're going to be able to return home, find out whether their home is going to survive. We'll gauge it. We'll listen to feedback about how people are feeling. But we know that this is going to be, for many people, a long-term period of time that they will be out. We'll have to obviously work with their insurance companies to ensure as well that they're able to get the support payments through insurance so that they can be supported that way also. But we do want to do whatever we can to be supportive.
And did you have a follow-up, Vincent?
Sure. Well, Fort McMurray had the advantage of high vacancies during the wildfire because the oil sands boom had just ended, and the main industry up here was able to restart pretty quickly. So Jasper, does not have high vacancies, and tourist infrastructure is in rough shape. So are there any ideas about where residents who lost their homes will be staying while they await their rebuild?
Look, I mean, we're right in the middle of fighting fires still. There's still dangers in the community. There's still structural fires occurring. So I think in any development of an emergency response, you have to deal with the immediate fire and the immediate danger, which is what everyone is doing. We'll continue meeting as an emergency management committee to identify the steps along the way once we do move into recovery and have a better sense of how many people are going to be displaced. But I think it's a bit too early for us to plan that until we know we have some certainty about what structures have been damaged.
Thank you, Vincent. Operator, could you go ahead and put through our next caller, please?
Yes, the next one is from David Staples. Please ask your question.
Thanks for taking my call. I'd just like to clarify a point that was raised earlier. Premier, you mentioned that Alberta has the capacity to fight fires at night with helicopters and, if I'm not mistaken, you said water bombers. What is the difference when it's run by Parks Canada? For them to use that kind of equipment, what's the process where they can use that kind of equipment, that night fighting ability? And was that requested? If it's their responsibility to request that, was that requested earlier this week? And has that been used there, or was it not used?
Well, I can tell you that what we learned last year by having over 2 million hectares burned is that Minister Lowen recognized that fighting with the weather and the change in temperature was really going to be the most effective way for us to get ahead of it. So as you've heard, we've had hundreds of fires around the province that we have been lead on, and our approach there has been to do exactly that, to use night vision helicopters where we can identify the fire, send in teams at night, and be able to douse them right after they start so that they don't grow out of control. So I'll turn it over to that's become our standard practice, where it's where we can do that and where we do have the authority. I'll turn it over to Minister Lowen to talk about Jasper in particular.
Yeah, so the process with Parks Canada is they make requests because they're in control of the situation there, and they make requests, and we've provided that. When they make requests for this equipment, for instance, night vision helicopters, then we provide the personnel, the helicopter, and everything to help fight that fire. And that's the way it's worked in this situation all the way through. We've provided Parks Canada with every request that they've had, we've fulfilled, and made sure that they had every available resource that was possible. So I'm not, Christy, did you have something to add?
I just say we have used night vision enabled helicopters very effectively so far this season. They allow us to understand the perimeters of the fire and even fight the fire overnight while the activity is low. We did make night vision helicopters available to Parks Canada to use on the wildfire in Jasper last night. Unfortunately, conditions meant that aircraft were not able to fly because of that extreme weather, smoke. It's not possible to fly in all conditions, unfortunately, and we were unable to use night vision last night.
Thank you. And David, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so usually there's, when there's a massive wildfire in Alberta, there's often major reports that come out investigating best practices and what caused it. We already have, of course, tons of theories and ideas about what caused this fire. And I'm just wondering what the post-mortem process will be for this particular fire. Will Alberta be involved, or will this be just a federal post-mortem because it's a national park fire? Do you know that yet? Like, how we're going to get to the bottom of how maybe we can avoid this kind of thing in the future?
Well, what we'll be proposing to Minister Sajjan when he joins us today, and I hope that we'll be able to proceed on, is a joint inquiry into finding out best practices. You may recall we passed legislation in the spring session that gives us the authority to step in any municipality when we see that they might be overwhelmed or when it goes cross-jurisdiction. There's a reason why we did that, is we didn't have the authority to do that all over the province. And we understood that federal land is federal jurisdiction. We figured that mutual aid agreements would be enough for us to be able to provide support. It may well be that we have to talk about how we have unified command right from the beginning, that if we're going to see a parks agency go to unified command with the municipality, it could well be that we make the decision that we can come in at that time. That would be one part. And I think we do have to look at all of our parks. There's a fire going on in Banff right now. We've had fires in Waterton in previous years as well. And so I think that in this one in particular, since it's a bit unique to have to deal with a federal agency, there may be additional learning that comes from that. I don't know if you want to comment, Minister Ellis.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Minister Sajjan, certainly these are discussions we're going to have with him regarding better, call it collaboration. I can tell you that Alberta Emergency Management, Alberta Wildfire, certainly recognized in Canada as being certainly one of the most prepared organizations in Canada. I know in my conversations with Minister Lowen, him and his team and the wildfire folks that are out there right now, they're absolutely stepping up to the plate and doing whatever they can. I've had extensive conversations with Minister Sajjan. They have been very positive. Let me just be clear on that. Minister Sajjan has recognized that there might be some gaps, especially when we've been talking already about the unified command and potential structure and how Alberta can be more a part of the decision-making process. And that's one of the reasons why he's coming to Alberta. It's not just to assess the situation, but he wants to work with us because we're understanding, some of the challenges that we're having from an AEMA perspective as well as an Alberta wildfire perspective. And the only other thing I want to add, which is beyond, we'll say, the question that you asked, David. I think people need to understand that fire was about 5 kilometers out. I know Stephen mentioned that there was an enormous wind gust. That wind gust moved that fire 5 kilometers in probably less than 30 minutes with a wall of fire that was about 100 meters high. I think people need to picture what those wildfire folks were experiencing at that time. And there is really, any firefighter will tell you there's little to nothing you can do when you have a wall of flames coming like that. So kudos to those folks that were the heroes that stood their ground in order to fight that fire. Kudos to the folks who are the structural firefighters that were preparing for that fire to be coming, but nobody anticipated that fire to come so fast, so large, and so quickly. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. We have time for one, maybe 2 more questions. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
Yes, Excellence from Jonathan Bradley. Your line is now.
Hello, Premier Smith. Thank you for taking my question. So your government over the last few years has made various cuts to Alberta's wildfire fighting budget. Do you regret making those cuts now? Why or why not?
Well, look, I mean, my first firefighting season was last year, and what we did in response to that was we increased the firefighting budget by 50%. In 2023-4, it was $100.4 million. In 24-25, we increased it to $155.4 million, and that's the highest it's ever been. And there's a reason for that. Is that we knew that we needed to get some of the equipment and change some of the practices, as Minister Lowen had mentioned. We declared the start of forest fire season early. We had all of our personnel hired and in place by April 15th, which is May 15th, by May 15th. And in addition to that, because of the amount of damage that we saw last year, when I first came in, we had $1 billion contingency. My first budget, we increased that to a $1.5 billion contingency. And this budget, we increased to a $2 billion contingency. So there is no limit to the amount of money that we will spend to make sure that we have the resources that we need and to make sure that we have the money available to assist with the recovery. So I would say that we've looked at the lessons of the past and we made the appropriate amount of investment in this budget year.
And did you have a follow-up, Jonathan?
Yeah. So you spoke about Jasper and how the community is destroyed and damaged, and how the Alberta government is going to be there to assist. What will your government do to assist with rebuilding Jasper?
Well, look, I mean, this is, again, one of the conversations we'll have to have with Minister Sajjan as well as Minister LeBlanc when he's here today. Because I've observed, for instance, that a similar tragedy in British Columbia 3 years in, they haven't begun reconstruction, and we have to be able to accelerate and move faster than that. This is one of the most important jewels in our national park system, not only in the province but in all of Canada. And so anything we can do to accelerate some of the development approvals, we want to be able to work collaboratively with the federal government on that. What often happens is that the municipality and province takes the lead on rebuilding, and then we cost share with the federal government in these kinds of disasters. So we just want to make sure that there aren't any obstructions or barriers in being able to get the rebuilding done.
Thank you. And we have time for one last question. Operator, could you put through the next caller, please?
Yes, the next one is from Dennis Compton. Please ask your question.
That's a question pertaining mostly to Northern Alberta, so I guess Christy Tucker would be the best place to answer it. You did say that the conditions are a bit better in this part of the province at this time. Can you kind of elaborate on that and what is going on, given also the fact that local municipalities have lifted the evacuation alert in the hamlet of Janvier?
Yes, the actions of municipalities is an indication of the change in conditions that we have seen in the northern, many parts of the north of the province. We have seen precipitation come in that has been extremely welcome to the teams that are working hard on those areas with communities that have been evacuated or have been under threat of evacuation. Obviously, those are still priority for Alberta Wildfire, and no matter what else is going on in the province, and we are getting the resources in to allocate as needed. It also gives us an opportunity to move teams around, move aircraft around, move equipment where we need it at any given time in the province. So certainly, many people in the north of the province happy to see some rain, firefighters among them, but it may mean that they are relocated somewhere else where we are seeing rising wildfire danger, as we have seen quite a lot of activity in the south as well. And one of the things to mention to people in the south of the province, many haven't experienced the same kind of conditions that we have seen up north, and they're getting them now. Things are very dry and very hot, and we are seeing winds in that area of the province, and we've seen the effect that wind can have on fire. But one thing to mention is that Alberta Wildfire needs water for our skimmers, and we often use natural lakes and bodies of water that are in the area to allow us to move quickly to drop water where we need to on wildfires. We've had some reports of people in boats and watercraft who may not have moved out of the way quickly enough when the skimmer needs to collect water. We do need people to be aware, particularly in those areas with a wildfire in the vicinity. If you see an air tanker, a skimmer, a wildfire plane coming towards the lake, please get out of the lake so it's safe for us to collect water. We can drop it quickly on wildfire and respond as quickly as we need to. Thank you.
That is a provincial government press conference talking about the wildfire situation in Jasper. And you heard from Premier Danielle Smith, the Minister of Forestry and Parks, Todd Loewen, Public Safety and Emergency Services Minister Mike Ellis, along with officials from both Alberta Wildlife and the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. Now, I can tell you that Parks Canada and the municipality of Jasper will be holding a media briefing at some point in the next half hour, and we will bring you that as well. I'm Jim Brown in Calgary, and this is special live programming dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper. We are looking forward to hearing from you. We've got another half an hour or so, depending on how much of it is taken up by press conferences. And if you have been affected personally by the evacuation, please give us a call. The number is 1-866-468-4422. If you have memories of Jasper that you'd like to share, we'd like to hear from you as well. Once again, 1-866-468-4422 is the number to call, and that toll-free number will work for our listeners in both Saskatchewan and British Columbia. You can also email your thoughts to us. The address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. Les Erdely is a Jasper resident who had to flee the town. He is currently at Calgary's Evacuation Centre waiting for a place to stay. Les, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jim.
How are things at the Evacuation Centre right now?
They're certainly picking up. The staff are doing a fantastic job trying to get everybody through and get everybody processed, but there's lots of food, there's lots of water, Tim Hortons, so I think everybody is, in as good spirits as they can be given the situation.
And how did you get there? Tell us about your journey from Jasper to Calgary.
Well, it was quite an ordeal. I mean, I guess everybody has their own story. What they went through. For me, in particular, when shortly before the evacuation notice was given, I had noticed that there was obviously stuff going on outside, smoke and whatnot. So I had started getting things ready. My daughter and her friend happened to be visiting me in Calgary. They live in Calgary, and so I started packing them up and just to get prepared, because I had the feeling that we may have to be getting ready to go. And when I left, it was just shortly before the evacuation order had been announced. And it took a couple of hours, about an hour and a half, I say, to actually get out of Jasper. There's quite a bit of traffic getting out, a lot of confusion, with law enforcement and everything directing traffic.
And there was only one direction to go, right?
Initially there was, yeah. They were directing everybody out on Highway 16 west out towards Valemont. From what I understand, later on they did open up going east out to Hinton with escorts, I guess. But I'm not sure that wasn't an option for us at the time.
So as you're sitting in the car waiting to finish your merge and get on the road, what are the conditions? What are the conditions like? What does the sky look like?
Are you still there?
Yep, still here. Yeah.
I lost you there. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I was just asking you as you were waiting to get out of town, what was the sky doing? What did it look like around you?
Well, it was pretty dark. I mean, by the time we were on the road, I mean, it was about 9:30, I think it was, when the actual evacuation order. So I mean, we're looking at 10, 11 o'clock at night. But I mean, it was pretty pitch black. There wasn't, but you could still tell there was still smoke in the air. While it was still light, I mean, the sky was pretty orange. There was a lot of ash falling around. I know before I left, I had to kind of brush the ash off of my windshield, as I was pulling out. So it was, I mean, now that I look back, I mean, it was a pretty surreal sort of moment. I mean, the whole ordeal is, I mean, I was just kind of in autopilot mode and at the time, and just trying to get to where we had to go.
And how long did it take you to get to Valemont?
Well, to Valemont, I think we got there just a little after 1 o'clock in the morning, and there was quite a bit of lineups at all the gas stations, you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't figure that there was going to be any availability. I mean, Valemont's not a large community. I mean,
right.
they did a fantastic job doing what they could, but I made the decision to keep on continuing down. Like I said, my daughter's from Calgary, so I knew we had to keep on going anyways. So we had pushed through, but I mean, typically that's like an hour and a half, to get from Jasper, tops.
Yeah.
And it took, close to, double that, especially when you factor in just the getting out of town.
So you filled up and then decided to head straight to Calgary.
That's right. Yeah. And again, I mean, I was keeping an eye out on the way for any places that just happened to say, I had the vacancy sign, on the way down, but there's not really a whole lot between, Valemont and Kamloops anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ended up stopping in Kamloops for the night on, what would have been early Wednesday morning.
Mm-hmm.
Around, I think we got in just a little after 5 o'clock, or, well, it was 6 o'clock, I guess, Alberta time, but with the time difference. So again, it took, it was still quite a bit of a drive. Traffic was pretty slow. There was a good section where we had, there was a big thunderstorm. So, I mean, that slowed a lot of traffic down too. So it was a pretty long night, as you can imagine.
So I've got to break shortly for the news here, Les, but what's the plan now?
Well, I mean, my daughter's back at home, and so is her friend. So, I mean, that was my prime concern. Right now, I've been just kind of getting little tidbits of information from my employer and what's going on there, and pay and all that kind of thing. But right now, it's just a matter of waiting to get my hotel allocation from the evacuation center. And really, it's just going to be monitoring things and trying not to do a whole lot of doom scrolling and getting too caught up with all the...
Well, that's it. Right now, you don't know if you have a home to return to, I guess, eh?
Exactly, yeah. And that's, I feel for everybody else that's going through the same situation, too. So the best thing we can just do is take it, one day and 1 minute at a time.
Well, Les, all the very best, and thanks once again for taking our call. We really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. And I just want to quickly say thank you to all the first responders and the firefighters that have been staying behind to save our town. It certainly doesn't go unnoticed, and your help means more than you could ever know.
Once again, we really appreciate this, Les. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Les Erdely. He is a Jasper resident who had to leave town, and he's currently at the Calgary Evacuation Center. You're listening to special live programming here at CBC Calgary on the situation in Jasper. I'm Jim Brown. We are going to take a short break now for a news update. Tahira Faruzan joins me with that. Hello again, Tahira.
Hello, Jim. We just heard from Premier Danielle Smith, along with the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, Alberta Wildfire, and the Forestry Minister. Our reporter, Michelle Belfontaine, joins me now. Michelle, what did we hear in that conference?
Well, we heard off the top a lot of emotion from Premier Danielle Smith. She expressed a sense of loss that she and other Albertans felt or feel about the damage from the Jasper fire.
A feeling that even though you've just left home, you're coming home. And so although those of us who experience Jasper as visitors can't imagine what it feels like to be a Jasperite right now, we share this sense of loss with all of those who live in the town, who care for it, and who have helped build it.
And she, Danielle Smith, later added that she feels that the magic is not lost in Jasper and it never will be, and that we will rebuild. So future generations can feel the magic of being able to go there and to come home, as she put it.
Mm-hmm. And we've heard a bit about the damage, which we don't have a lot of details about right now, but we did get a little bit of detail in that news conference.
Yeah, Emergency Services Minister Mike Ellis said that, and Smith as well, said that they estimate the damage to be about 30 to 50% of the town. That, as you point out, that's the first time we've heard anything about the extent of the damage, and that they're going to be having meetings this afternoon. That's the other news out of this, with the Prime Minister, with the Minister of Emergency Preparedness, Harjit Sajjan, who's going to be here, and then the Prime Minister, I think, will be on the phone, and they're going to be talking about where they going forward, and also talking about moving perhaps from the unified command of Parks Canada and of the town of Jasper to have more of a unified command structure going forward.
Right. And for evacuees, what did the province say about supporting them?
Well, Alberta does offer about $1,200 for an adult and $500 per child for fire evacuees, but they don't kick in. Those benefits don't kick in until about a week after they've been forced from their homes. So that doesn't apply at the moment. But Danielle Smith did say that, we do have evacuation centers right now in Grand Prairie, in Calgary, and Edmonton. They're going to be providing, hotels and meals. And, they're also going to have to look at longer term recovery as they go forward.
Right. Michelle, thank you so much for this.
You're welcome.
And what we're hearing in terms of weather is that some rain did fall overnight, not enough to make a meaningful impact. But Christy Tucker with Alberta Wildfire says while there wasn't significant rain, it did raise humidity levels, which she says tends to lower wildfire behavior. But she did say that it's still a long-term firefight for now, Jim.
Thank you very much, Tahara. That's Tahara Fruzen in the newsroom. I'm Jim Brown in Calgary, and this is special programming dealing with the wildfire situation in Jasper. We are on the air for another half hour. We may have to break once again because Parks Canada is going to be providing an update on the situation at some point in the next 30 minutes, we understand. We also have an expert on wildfires standing by if you have any questions you'd like to ask. Jen Beverly is with the University of Alberta. And we would like to hear from you if you have been affected personally by the evacuation of Jasper, or if you have any memories of the community that you'd like to share with listeners. Please give us a call. The number is 1-866-468-4422. And we're going to go to a caller right now. We have Michael joining us from Edmonton. Good afternoon, Michael. Hello, Michael. Michael, can you hear me? I think we're having trouble hooking up with Michael. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, yes. What are your thoughts about what's going on in Jasper?
Yeah, first of all, my thoughts and prayers go out to everyone affected by the Alberta wildfires. It certainly hits close to home, and I feel for everyone involved. I just thought I'd share a couple points here. I was in Jasper about 2 years ago, and I was speaking with a ranger who had told me that with the pine beetle, a third of all of the trees in Jasper were affected. They were literally dead trees, and this set up very dangerous situations. They were told. The locals were told to put together a bug-out bag then. So this situation was looming, I think, for some time. I guess that's an interesting point. I don't know if it's been talked about yet.
All right. Well, we appreciate you raising that, and I will put that to our expert now. Thank you very much for your call.
Thanks. Take care.
And you, that's Michael calling from Edmonton. Jen Beverly's been with us for the entire show. She's an associate professor in the Department of Renewable Resources at the U of A. She's been studying wildfires for over 25 years. She also has 6 years' experience as a wildfire fighter. So, Jen, what do you think about Michael's point? Could the mountain pine beetle situation have contributed to this?
Yeah, so there are definitely mountain pine beetle affected areas in the valley where this fire spread through, the one to the south. And yes, initially when those stands are killed by the beetles, the foliage, the needles on the conifer trees, the pine trees, are still on the tree, and they die and turn kind of a reddish color. And if you've been to Jasper, you may have seen those red trees in the forest. And those are recently killed by the mountain pine beetle, and they'll be in that kind of red stage for usually a couple of years after they've died. And those trees with the suspended red needles are extraordinarily flammable. They're very, very flammable. The fuel is dead, so it dries out quite a lot. It's way more dry than the live needles on the trees. And that does create the potential for a really explosive fire behavior, even beyond what you would normally see in conifer. Those trees with needles, they burn really well, even when they're green. So when those needles are dead and still suspended on the branches, yes, that can absolutely create extreme fire behavior. But the conditions of this fire were so extreme. You're going from an extreme that you would have without the beetle-killed trees to an even enhanced extreme level, but in both cases, they're going to exceed suppression capabilities. So it's hard to know, what part of the fire behavior you would contribute to those beetles specifically. But no doubt they were creating more dead, dry fuel for the fire. Over time, those needles drop and they become kind of gray, and now they accumulate on the forest, and all that fuel is accumulating then on the forest floor, but it's still there. So if it's dry, again, it's going to contribute to the fire intensity.
Thank you very much for that, Jen. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to interrupt our conversation once again because we have yet another press conference. This is Parks Canada and the municipality of Jasper holding a briefing with an update on the situation. Let's take you there now. Now, apparently, we don't have that press conference available right now. So, Jen, let me pick that up then. The conversation we're having on the mountain pine beetle. Given the risk of those mountain pine beetle affected trees, and given the extent of the range of the beetle in this province, is anything going on to try to remove some of that potential fire fuel?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's been ongoing work for a couple of decades trying to mitigate fire risk in and around Jasper, and including dealing with some of those mountain pine beetle affected stands near the town. And so that involves manually removing them, and also getting some of that fuel that's accumulated on the surface and piling that and burning it. Also prescribed fires. So there, the town of and as well Parks Canada well aware of the threat that mountain pine beetle affected areas pose from a fire risk perspective, and have been working on mitigating that for quite a while.
Okay. That's Jen Beverly at the U of A, and she is with us for the next 20 minutes or so. If you have any questions that you'd like answered about the wildfire situation in Jasper and indeed across the province, if you've been affected by the Jasper fires, we'd like to hear from you. If you have memories of the town of Jasper that you'd like to share, we'd also like to hear those. The number to call is 1-866-468-4422. Christina Richards is among the many Jasper residents who has had to evacuate. She's currently keeping safe in Valemount, British Columbia, and she joins me now. Hello, Christina.
Hey.
Thank you very much for joining us. Could you walk us through your journey? What have the past few days been like?
Pretty crazy, actually. So Monday, we were, me and my family, we were all at home, and there was just this crazy windstorm that picked up. And then all of a sudden we heard all the fire alarms go off. Me and my husband just looked at each other. We're like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden the town filled with smoke. We ran to the gas stations, filled up some jerry cans. At that point, we kind of looked at each other. We're like, what do we do? Should we start packing and leaving? Me and all my friends in town, we were all texting each other, like, what are you guys doing? Should we leave? So before the evacuation notice even came out, we were packing to head out. And within, I feel like the whole time took 20 minutes before the evacuation even came out. We were on the road.
Mm-hmm. And when you say we, who was with you?
Me, my husband, Chris, and my two little boys.
Mm-hmm. And you at this point you had no choice but to head west, correct?
Yes, all highways were blocked off because of the fires.
Right. Sorry, Christina, I'm just going to ask you to stand by for a minute because, wait a minute, maybe I'm not going to ask you to stand by. We either do or don't have a Parks Canada press conference happening right now. I think we're still waiting to know for sure. So let me just ask you, you went straight to Valemount. What was the road like? What was the conditions like as you were driving?
So it probably took about 5 hours to get out of Jasper alone. So at 10:20, I think the evacuation notice came. We left town via the east side, and from the east side of Jasper to the west side of Jasper took us about 4.5 hours to move. It was bumper to bumper. It was insane. There was ashes, snowing. All we seen was emergency trucks going back and forth, and then towards the 4-hour mark, a huge lightning thunderstorm started coming, and that's when I personally started to panic. But thankfully, at that point, we were at the west side, and traffic started flowing, but we were probably about 60, 70 kilometers the whole way to Valemount. Luckily, we were able to get a campsite here, and we've been camping here ever since, and just living off Facebook posts from everybody posting pictures and videos. And
do you have any idea how your place is faring?
My business in Jasper, so Jasper Tire, is burnt. So that's gone. Our houses, we live on the east side of town, and as far as we know, it's still standing.
Okay.
But there's been no definite update.
Christina, all the best in the days and weeks and months ahead. We really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Christina Richards, a Jasper resident in Valemount, British Columbia. And now we are going to take you to that press conference with Parks Canada and the municipality of Jasper.
In Jasper National Park, reach the outskirts of the Jasper town site, then move into the town of Jasper after being driven by strong wind gusts from the south and southeast. Despite the ongoing determined and courageous collective efforts of all of the partners involved, including Parks Canada team member, the town of Jasper, and Alberta Wildfire, it is with heavy hearts that we report that this aggressive and fast-moving fire continues to burn in Jasper National Park. While we do not yet have specific details, we do know that multiple structures, including a number of businesses and homes in and around the town of Jasper, have been lost. Structural firefighters remain in the town and are working to save as many structures as possible and to protect critical infrastructure. Additional structural protection firefighters are en route to the town of Jasper as we speak. Parks Canada National Fire Engine Program team members have been and continue to collaborate with the Mayor Richard Ireland and the town of Jasper through Unified Command and Jasper Fire Department and Chief Matthew Conti, as well as personnel from the Alberta Emergency Management Agency and Alberta Wildfire. Wildland firefighters have relocated their command posts and are continuing efforts to fight this aggressive fire. All available resources have been and continue to be used as we coordinate activities through the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre. We know this is an extremely challenging time for the community of Jasper, Albertans, and Parks Canada and Parks Canada team members. We command emergency responders from Parks Canada, the town of Jasper, and the province of Alberta, who were able to evacuate more than 20,000 residents and visitors safely. We wish to express condolences to all affected community members, their families, their friends, business operators, and all those who love Jasper and Jasper National Park. Many first responders, including Parks Canada wildland firefighters, are members of the Jasper community. Your community is our community. We know many residents and business owners will be anxious to hear about the status of their home and businesses. For safety reasons and to ensure first responders can do their work, we ask that people respect the area closure. We'll be able to provide further updates and more information as soon as conditions allow. OK, maintenant en français. Donc, les derniers jours ont été assez difficiles depuis que l'incident a débuté tard lundi soir. Depuis notre dernière mise à jour, des développements importants sont survenus concernant les incendies de forêt dans la ville de Jasper et dans le parc national Jasper. Peu avant 18h, heure des montagnes, le 24 juillet, les parties du feu sud au parc national Jasper ont atteint la périphérie de la ville de Jasper, puis se sont déplacés dans la ville de Jasper après avoir été poussés par de fortes rafales de vent du sud et du sud-est. Malgré les efforts collectifs déterminés et courageux continus de tous les partenaires concernés, y compris les membres de l'équipe Parc Canada, la ville de Jasper et Alberta Wildfire, c'est avec le cœur lourd que nous annonçons que ce feu agressif et qui se déplace rapidement continue de brûler dans le parc national Jasper.
You're listening to special programming dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper. I'm Jim Brown in Calgary, and we are listening right now to a news conference being held by Parks Canada and the municipality of Jasper. It's a briefing to provide an update on the wildfire situation. We will be broadcasting until 1 o'clock, at which time we'll have a quick news break, and then we'll throw you to continuing coverage of the fire situation from Edmonton. If you are an evacuee or if you have been affected by the evacuation, there could still be time for us to hear from you. So if you'd like to give us a call, the number is 1-866-468-4422, and we'll take you back to that Parks Canada news conference right now.
Les pompiers forestiers ont déménagé leur poste de commandement et poursuivent leurs efforts pour lutter contre cet incendie agressif. Toutes les ressources disponibles ont été et continuent d'être utilisées alors que nous coordonnons les activités par l'intermédiaire du Centre interservice des feux de forêt du Canada. Nous savons qu'il s'agit d'une période extrêmement difficile pour la communauté de Jasper, les résidents de l'Alberta et les membres de l'équipe Parc Canada. Nous saluons le travail exceptionnel des intervenants d'urgence de Parc Canada, de la ville de Jasper, de la province de l'Alberta, qui ont pu évacuer plus de 20 000 résidents et visiteurs en toute sécurité. Nous souhaitons exprimer nos condoléances à tous les membres de la communauté touchée, à leurs familles, à leurs amis, aux propriétaires d'entreprises et à tous ceux qui aiment Jasper et le Parc national Jasper. De nombreux premiers intervenants, dont les pompiers forestiers de Parc Canada, sont membres de la communauté de Jasper. Votre communauté est notre communauté. Nous savons que de nombreux résidents et propriétaires d'entreprises seront impatients de connaître l'état de leur maison et de leur entreprise. Pour des raisons de sécurité et pour s'assurer que les premiers répondants peuvent effectuer leur travail, nous demandons aux gens de respecter la fermeture du secteur. D'autres mises à jour et plus de renseignements seront communiqués dès que les conditions le permettront. Merci.
Thank you. Merci, Pierre. I will now invite Mayor Ireland to make his remarks. J'inviterai maintenant le maire de la ville de Jasper d'entamer ses remarques. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Natalie, and welcome all. And today, as I have done, I will restrict my remarks to community impacts, not engage in any technicalities or in any speculation regarding the same. Like most of you, I think today I had hoped to receive some further verified details of what has happened on the ground, but I fully appreciate that as this wildfire continues to rage, there are other priorities for those on the ground. And so I accept that some of those details simply will have to wait until later. And with all of that, I speak to you today with profound sorrow as our community begins to come to terms with the devastating impacts of last night's wildfire that have simply ravaged our small, tight-knit mountain community. The destruction and the loss that so many of our residents are facing and feeling defies description and is almost beyond comprehension. Deepest sympathies go to all of our residents, and I know that so many of you and so many Canadians have expressed those same sentiments, and thank you for that. To all of the responders on the ground in our town, in our home, words cannot express the admiration and the gratitude we have for their professionalism, dedication, and their unyielding efforts. And our priority continues to be the safety and well-being of everyone involved and affected by this ongoing tragedy. The incident command team continues to work with responders on the ground to continually and valiantly work to protect our town and our home, and we will continue to provide supports to evacuees in other communities. And for any residents who are able to tune in, I just want to assure you that as Mayor and Council, we are committed to continuing our support the entire community through this truly unprecedented challenge and beyond. And we will continue to work closely with all levels of governments, other organizations, and volunteers to coordinate relief efforts and provide essential resources and information to assist all who have impacted. I'm happy to say that the level of cooperation between all jurisdictions as a municipality created under provincial jurisdiction but existing in a federal jurisdiction are unusually impacted. But all of those jurisdictional boundaries tend to disappear when we get together like this, and just commend the unified efforts of everyone and thank those particularly engaged in our command. I am prepared to answer questions regarding community impact, recognizing that I am faced to acknowledge a lack of information, and it needs to be verified before I can speak to it. But thank you for your interest.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. So we will open up the floor now to questions and answers. Just a quick recap for those who are joining us for the first time. Please use the hand raising function on Microsoft Teams if you have a question. I see many of you have already found it. For those media who are joining by telephone, please use *5 if you wish to raise your hand. Again, for today, we do ask that you keep it to one question so that we can get through as many as possible. And before you ask your question, please be sure to just state your full name and media outlet. I will call on you when it is your turn to ask a question so that you can unmute yourself and begin. Now I will just repeat this in French and we will get started. Donc, pour les médias qui se joignent à nous en ligne, veuillez utiliser la fonction lever la main si vous avez une question. Pour les médias qui se joignent par téléphone, veuillez utiliser *5 pour lever la main. Et pour aujourd'hui, nous vous demandons donc de vous tenir à une question. Et avant de poser votre question, veuillez déclarer votre nom et votre bureau de presse. Si jamais vous avez des questions que nous n'avons pas la réponse, nous allons faire notre mieux de faire un suivi par écrit par la suite. So for those, one thing I said in French that I didn't say in English is that if there will likely be many questions that we do not have the information for yet, we will do our best to follow up with those questions as the information becomes available, but I cannot commit to timelines at this point. We will try to get through to as many questions as possible before we go back to focusing on operations. So to begin, I will call on, I believe I have Connor O'Donovan. Can you please state your media outlet and ask your question?
Hey, yeah, that's right. Connor O'Donovan with the Weather Network here. So we've been hearing from a lot of people who are unfortunately discovering that their homes have been destroyed from seeing videos on social media, and I'm hearing some sentiment of frustration that this is the way people are finding out, and that they feel like there's been a bit of a lack of information from official sources like the municipality and Parks Canada. And so while I respect the fact that you want to take the time to be accurate when reporting the damage and losses, do you have any idea of when the folks who are kind of sitting at home or sitting in evacuation centers, not at home, and sitting wherever they are, waiting to see if their home has been destroyed, will have official information from someone within the city or the town about if that has happened or what the extent of damage might be?
I can start, Mayor, and pass it to you after if you would like. Thanks, Connor, for your question. So I would just start by saying that at this point, our efforts continue to try to fight the fire. So we have a significant number of firefighters that are still in town dealing with structural fires and trying to continue to prevent further losses of homes and buildings. And so as soon as it's feasible, we will do what we can to provide updates.
And from my perspective, we simply need to be able to have verifiable information. I understand the community interest in that. Of course, it is one of the most pressing issues for nearly all of our community right now. And yes, they are privy to posts on social media and other platforms. But until we can verify from people on the ground what is there, our sense is that it would be irresponsible to try and confirm things based on unverified facts. So we are as anxious as anybody to get the detailed verified information so we can share it with our residents. But until we have that, we simply have nothing to share. And so I appreciate people see that as a frustration, but we need the information before we can share it, and we fully appreciate that those on the ground.
This is the mayor of Jasper, Richard Ireland, along with Parks Canada officials holding a news conference this afternoon. And that's going to do it for our special programming. But we will have more on CBC Radio right after we break for the news. Min Dhaliwal in Edmonton will continue live coverage from our Edmonton studios. I'm Jim Brown in Calgary. Thank you very much for listening. The news is next.
To that one.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, I apologize. I had to change my mic settings. And apologies as well if there's some background noise in here in my newsroom. So I understand, you're not able to give an exact scope of the damage, but obviously it is a question that's on everyone's mind today more than anything else, really. Are you able to say anything about what has been damaged outside of the town site, specifically a lot of those campgrounds to the south